As the night settles around you, imagine a land draped in mist, where ancient castles loom under the silver glow of a crescent moon. Their stone walls, weathered by time, whisper tales of kings and queens, of battles fought and crowns won, of love, betrayal, and the unyielding passage of history. Tonight, dear listener, let us embark on a journey through 1,000 years of English monarchy, a tapestry woven with ambition, glory, and the quiet moments that shaped a nation. Close your eyes, let the world fade, and allow my voice to guide you through the shadowed halls of England's past, where every monarch left their mark, their dreams, and their burdens. This is no ordinary tale. It is a story that stretches from the rugged days of Anglo-Saxon kings, when warriors ruled with iron and oath, to the glittering courts of the Tudors and the modern elegance of the House of Windsor. Each ruler, from the conquerors to the cursed, from the beloved to the forgotten, has added a thread to this grand narrative. As you drift toward sleep, picture yourself standing on the cliffs of Dover, the wind carrying echoes of coronation bells, clashing swords, and the soft murmurs of royal councils. This is a story of power, of faith, of triumph and tragedy, a story that has shaped the very soul of England. We will wander through the centuries, from the chaos of the Norman conquest to the intrigue of the Wars of the Roses, from the divine right of kings to the constitutional balance of today. You'll meet figures who seem larger than life. William the Conqueror, his shadow stretching across a newly claimed land. Elizabeth I, her golden reign a beacon of defiance. And Victoria, whose empire spanned the globe. But you'll also linger in quieter moments. The private grief of a monarch, the weight of a crown, the fleeting joys of a royal heart. This is a tale to lull you into dreams, to let history cradle you as you rest. So find a comfortable place, let your worries slip away, and surrender to the gentle rhythm of this story. Let the past unfold like a river, carrying you through time. Hello, my name is Sherry, and welcome to my channel. So let's begin. Imagine a land of deep forests and rolling hills, where the wind carries the scent of earth and the distant clang of iron. It is the early centuries of England, a patchwork of kingdoms carved from the ruins of Roman Britannia. The Anglo-Saxons, fierce warriors with braided beards and eyes like the stormy North Sea, have settled this rugged isle. Their world is one of fire-lit halls, where mead flows and bards sing of heroes. In this untamed age, the seeds of English monarchy are sown, fragile yet enduring, rooted in the courage of men like Alfred, whose name would echo through time. The story begins in the shadows of the 5th century, when the Romans abandoned Britain, leaving its people to fend for themselves against invaders. The Angles, Saxons, and Jutes swept across the sea, their longships slicing through the waves like wolves on the hunt. They carved out kingdoms, 7 in time, known as the Heptarchy: Kent, Sussex, Wessex, Essex, Mercia, East Anglia, and Northumbria. Each was ruled by a king, a warrior lord who held power through strength and loyalty, his hall filled with thanes swearing oaths over gleaming swords. Picture these kings, their cloaks heavy with furs, their crowns little more than circlets of gold, yet their authority as unyielding as the oak. Among them, one name rises above the rest. Alfred, later called the Great, King of Wessex from 871 to 899. He was no mere warlord, but a man of vision, his mind as sharp as his blade. In the late 8th century, the Vikings, those relentless seafarers from the north, descended upon England like a storm. Their dragon-proud ships brought fire and ruin, sacking monasteries and scattering kingdoms. Alfred, barely more than a youth when he took the throne, faced a land on the brink of collapse. Picture him in the marshes of Athelney, hidden from Viking scouts, his breath clouding in the chill dawn as he planned his counterstrike. It was here, in the heart of Wessex, that he rallied his people, forging an army from farmers and freemen. In 878, at the Battle of Edington, Alfred met the Viking leader Guthrum in a clash that would decide England's fate. The air was thick with the cries of warriors, the thud of shields, and the ring of steel. Alfred's forces, disciplined and fierce, drove the Vikings back, securing a victory that was more than a battle won. It was the birth of a dream. Alfred forced Guthrum to peace, even baptizing him as a Christian, a gesture that wove faith into the fabric of his rule. He began to unite the kingdoms, not just through conquest but through law and learning. He built burhs, fortified towns, to protect his people, their stone walls rising like sentinels against the night. He revived scholarship, translating Latin texts into the Anglo-Saxon tongue, believing that a king must nourish the mind as well as the sword. Yet Alfred's reign was not without sorrow. His health was frail, his body racked by pain, perhaps from a chronic illness that haunted him even as he led. Imagine him, late at night, poring over manuscripts by candlelight, his face lined with the weight of a crown that demanded everything. He was a king who knew the cost of power, who saw beyond his own lifetime to a unified England. His successors, his son Edward the Elder and grandson Aethelstan, would build on his legacy, knitting the kingdoms closer together. Aethelstan, crowned in 925, was the first to call himself King of the English. His coronation at Kingston upon Thames a moment of triumph, the bells ringing across the river as a new era dawned. But unity was fragile. The Anglo-Saxon kings faced constant threats, Vikings from without, rival lords from within. Their courts were places of intrigue, where loyalty was as fleeting as the morning mist. Picture a great hall, its rafters blackened by smoke, where a king like Edmund or Edred sat upon a carved throne, listening to whispered plots and bold petitions. These were men who ruled not by divine right, but by the strength of their will, their reigns a delicate balance of war and wisdom. Their England was a land of contrasts, golden crosses gleaming in monasteries, yet blood staining the fields where battles raged. It was a world where a king's legacy was measured not just in victories, but in the stories told by those who followed. As Alfred's line grew, so did the dream of a single crown, yet the path was never smooth. Rivalries simmered, and the shadow of invasion loomed ever larger. By the early 11th century, a new threat emerged, a storm from across the sea that would shatter the Anglo-Saxon world. As you drift closer to sleep, imagine standing on the shores of England, the waves crashing at your feet, and far on the horizon, the sails of a conqueror's fleet. What would come next would change the monarchy forever, a tale of blood and ambition that waits just beyond the tide. The year is 1066, and England stands at a crossroads, its fate trembling on the edge of a blade. The Anglo-Saxon world, so carefully woven by Alfred and his heirs, now teeters beneath a sky heavy with portent. The sea churns, restless, as if sensing the storm about to break. Across the channel, in the rugged duchy of Normandy, a man with fire in his eyes and ambition in his heart prepares to claim a crown. His name is William, known to history as the Conqueror, and his coming will reshape England's soul. As you settle deeper into the embrace of night, let the mists of time carry you to a land on the brink of transformation, where the clash of swords will echo for centuries. The story begins with a death. King Edward the Confessor, a man of piety and frail health, lies on his deathbed in January 1066. His reign, marked by peace but shadowed by intrigue, leaves no clear heir. Edward, childless, has promised the throne to multiple claimants, sowing seeds of discord. Among them is Harold Godwinson, a powerful Anglo-Saxon earl, his lineage steeped in the politics of Wessex. Picture him, broad-shouldered and resolute, standing in the cold stone chamber of Westminster, where Edward's final words name him king. The Witan, the council of nobles, crowns him Herald II, and for a moment the Anglo-Saxon crown seems secure. But across the sea, William, Duke of Normandy, hears of this coronation and rages. He claims Edward promised him the throne, a vow sealed by ties of blood and ambition. In the north, another claimant, Harald Hardrada, King of Norway, sharpens his axe, believing the crown is his by right. Imagine the tension in England's air, like the hush before a storm. Harold II, newly crowned, knows his reign will be tested. The Normans, descended from Viking stock but now steeped in Frankish culture, are a formidable foe. William, a bastard son who clawed his way to power, is no ordinary duke. His court in Rouen buzzes with preparations. Knights polishing armor, ships rising from timber, and priests blessing his cause, for William claims divine sanction. He secures the Pope's approval, a banner of holy legitimacy to cloak his conquest. Picture his fleet, Hundreds of ships, their sails catching the wind as they cross the channel, a dark tide bearing destiny. On September 28, 1066, William lands at Pevensey, his boots sinking into English soil. The south coast hums with the march of his army, knights on horseback, archers with yew bows, and foot soldiers hardened by years of war. Harold, meanwhile, faces threats on two fronts. In the north, Harold Hardrada invades, joining forces with Harold's rebellious brother, Tostig. At the Battle of Stamford Bridge, Harold II proves his mettle, crushing the Norse invaders in a blood-soaked clash. Hardrada falls, an arrow piercing his throat, and Tostig's betrayal ends in death. But there is no time for triumph. Word reaches Harold that William has landed, and the weary king marches his army south, covering 200 miles in days, their boots heavy with mud and resolve. The fateful day dawns on October 14, 1066, near Hastings. Picture the rolling hills, the morning mist curling around the standards of two armies. Harold's Saxons, exhausted but fierce, form a shield wall atop Senlac Hill, their axes gleaming. William's Normans, disciplined and cunning, array below cavalry, archers, and infantry, a machine of war. The battle begins with a hail of arrows, the sky darkening as shafts find flesh. The Saxons hold firm, their shields a wall of defiance, but William is a master of strategy. He feigns retreats, luring Harold's men from their line, then unleashes his knights to cut them down. Hour after hour, the field becomes a mire of blood and broken spears. As the sun dips, the tide turns. An arrow, some say, strikes Harold in the eye, though the Bayeux tapestry leaves the moment shrouded in mystery. His fall breaks the Saxon spirit, and William's forces surge forward. By nightfall, the field is his, littered with the fallen, the air heavy with the cries of the wounded. Harold's body, mutilated, is later found, his dream of kingship ended. William, now the Conqueror, claims the crown, crowned on Christmas Day 1066 in Westminster Abbey. Imagine the scene. The abbey's stone arches ringing with Latin chants, yet outside, Norman soldiers quell a restless crowd, their swords a grim reminder of the new order. William's conquest is more than a victory, it is a remaking. He builds castles, towering fortresses like the White Tower of London, to dominate the land. He replaces Saxon nobles with Norman lords, their French tongue now echoing in England's halls. The Doomsday Book, a vast survey of his new realm, records every village, every ox, binding the land to his will. Yet his rule is harsh, his harrying of the north a brutal campaign that leaves entire regions desolate, their fields charred, their people broken. Picture a survivor, an old woman in a ruined village, her eyes reflecting the flames of a world lost. The Norman conquest reshapes England's monarchy, planting seeds of centralized power that will grow for centuries. But William's triumph is not the end. His sons will inherit a kingdom restless with rebellion, their reigns a test of whether Norman iron can hold what was won by blood. As you drift toward sleep, imagine standing on Hastings Field, the wind carrying the faint echo of clashing steel. What legacy will William's heirs forge, and what storms await the crown? The story is far from over. The air is thick with the scent of damp stone and burning pitch as England awakens to a new reality under Norman rule. The year is 1066, and William the Conqueror's crown, won through blood at Hastings, rests uneasily upon his head. His shadow stretches across a land still raw from conquest, its people weary, its Saxon lords displaced by stern Norman barons. Castles rise like iron fists, their battlements piercing the sky, a constant reminder of the new order. As you sink deeper into the folds of night, let the whispers of this turbulent age guide you through the reigns of William's heirs, where power is forged in fire, and the monarchy's roots dig deeper into England's soil. Picture yourself in a Norman keep, the firelight flickering on tapestries, as the story of a dynasty unfolds. William's reign, from 1066 to 1087, is a masterclass in control. He is a king who rules not just with a sword, but with a quill, his Doomsday Book a testament to his relentless need to know and govern every inch of his realm. Imagine scribes hunched over parchment, recording the wealth of villages from Cornwall to Northumbria, their ink-stained fingers tracing the contours of a kingdom bound to one man's will. Yet William's grip is not without cracks. Rebellions flare, Saxon earls, Viking raiders, even his own Norman lords test his authority. In the north, he crushes dissent with the harrying, leaving a wasteland where once fields bloomed. Picture the desolation. Skeletal trees against a gray sky, villages silent but for the wail of survivors. William, astride his warhorse, surveys the ruin, his face unreadable, a king who knows the cost of power. When William dies in 1087, his body broken after a fall from his horse, the crown passes to his second son, William II, known as Rufus for his ruddy complexion. Ascend to the throne in a Westminster still echoing with his father's coronation, William Rufus is a different king, brash, ambitious, and less burdened by piety. His court is a place of excess, where knights boast and gold flows, yet his rule is marked by tension. The barons, grown powerful under his father, chafe at his demands. Picture him, a broad man with a temper to match, striding through the halls of Winchester, his laughter booming but his eyes ever watchful. He clashes with the church, particularly Archbishop Anselm, whose calls for reform challenge royal authority. Rufus's reign is prosperous but precarious, his grip on the crown tested by rebellions and a restless nobility. In 1100, fate intervenes. During a hunt in the New Forest, an arrow, whether by accident or design, pierces Rufus's heart. The forest, thick with ancient oaks, becomes a stage for mystery. Was it a stray shot, or a whispered plot among those who coveted the throne? His body, left bleeding on the forest floor, is carted away, and the crown passes swiftly to his younger brother, Henry I. Imagine the haste, the nobles gathering in shadowed councils, their breath visible in the chill air as they proclaim Henry king before Rufus's blood has dried. Henry, crowned in 1100, is a scholar king, his mind as sharp as his father's but tempered by cunning. He marries Matilda of Scotland, uniting Norman and Anglo-Saxon blood, a gesture to heal a divided land. Picture their wedding, the abbey aglow with candles, the crowd murmuring as a Saxon princess becomes a Norman queen. Henry's reign, spanning 1100 to 1135, is a time of consolidation. He strengthens the crown's authority, creating a system of royal justices to enforce law across the realm. His court at Westminster hums with clerks and charters, the machinery of governance taking shape. Yet, his personal life is shadowed by tragedy. His only legitimate son, William Adelin, dies in 1120 when the White Ship sinks off Normandy's coast. Picture the scene. A moonlit sea, the ship's timbers splintering, the cries of the drowning swallowed by the waves. Henry, grief-stricken, names his daughter Matilda as heir, a bold move in a world that distrusts a woman's rule. The barons swear allegiance, but their promises are as fragile as autumn leaves. When Henry dies in 1135, the kingdom fractures. Matilda, fierce and determined, claims the throne, but her cousin Stephen of Blois seizes it, crowned in a hasty ceremony. Thus begins the Anarchy, a civil war that tears England apart from 1135 to 1154. Imagine the land, villages burned, crops trampled, families fleeing as rival armies clash. Matilda, clad in armor, fights for her birthright, her spirit unyielding even as her forces falter. Stephen, charming but weak, struggles to hold the crown, his reign plagued by baronial revolts. Picture a siege at Oxford, 1142, where Matilda escapes by night, cloaked in white to blend with the snow, her breath clouding as she flees across a frozen river. The war drags on, neither side able to claim victory, the people caught in the crucible of ambition. The anarchy tests the monarchy's resilience, exposing the fragility of a crown contested. Yet in its chaos, the seeds of a new dynasty are sown. Matilda's son, Henry Plantagenet, emerges as a claimant, his eyes set on a throne that could unite England once more. As the war-weary land yearns for peace, his rise promises a new chapter. Picture a weary knight, his armor dented, gazing at a distant castle where banners still fly. What will this new claimant bring, a reign of strength or further strife? As you drift toward sleep, let the echoes of clashing steel and whispered oaths linger, for the story of England's crown is far from settled. The year is 1154, and England exhales a weary breath, its fields scarred from the anarchy's long strife. The land yearns for a steady hand, a king to bind its wounds and restore the crown's luster. Into this fractured realm steps Henry Plantagenet, a young man with fire in his veins and a vision as vast as the empire he will forge. Crowned Henry II, he marks the dawn of the Plantagenet dynasty, a line that will shape England for centuries. As you sink deeper into the embrace of sleep, imagine a windswept hill where a new king stands, his cloak billowing, gazing over a kingdom ready to be remade. Let the story of his reign, woven with law, conquest, and family strife, carry you through the shadowed halls of history. Henry II, barely 21 when he takes the throne, is no ordinary king. Born of Matilda's fierce resolve and Geoffrey of Anjou's ambition, he inherits not just England, but a sprawling dominion stretching from the Scottish borders to the Pyrenees. Picture him, sharp-eyed and restless, riding through mist-laden valleys, his mind alight with plans to restore order. His court is a whirlwind of activity, clerks scribbling charters, barons swearing fealty, and messengers galloping to distant castles. Henry is a king of relentless energy, his presence filling every room like a storm. He reforms the law, establishing royal courts that bring justice to the common man, their verdicts echoing in market squares and village greens. The exchequer, his financial engine, hums with efficiency, its records etched on tally sticks, ensuring the crown's coffers never run dry. Yet, Henry's greatest strength is also his burden, his family. In 1152, he marries Eleanor of Aquitaine, a woman as formidable as he, her beauty matched only by her intellect. Picture their wedding in Poitiers, the cathedral aglow with torchlight, their union sealing control over Aquitaine's sun-drenched lands. Eleanor, once Queen of France, brings wealth and wisdom, but also a will that clashes with Henry's own. Their court becomes a stage for grandeur, filled with music, poetry, and the vibrant culture of the South. Together, they sire 8 children, including 5 sons, each a potential heir and a potential rival. Imagine the royal nursery, alive with the laughter of princes, yet shadowed by the weight of future crowns. Henry's reign is marked by conquest and consolidation. He strengthens England's grip on Wales, forcing its princes to bend the knee, their oaths sworn beneath the looming walls of Norman castles. In Ireland, his knights carve out a foothold, planting the seeds of centuries-long entanglement. Picture a windswept Irish coast, where Norman ships unload men and horses, their banners snapping in the gale. Yet Henry's ambition stirs conflict closer to home. His friendship with Thomas Becket, his chancellor and confidant, sours when he appoints Becket Archbishop of Canterbury. Becket, once a loyal ally, becomes a defender of the church's rights, defying Henry's attempts to control it. Their clash is a drama of pride and principle, played out in the stone arches of Canterbury Cathedral. In 1170, the tension breaks. 4 knights, believing they act on Henry's frustrated words, "Will no one rid me of this turbulent priest?" murder Becket at the altar. Picture the scene. The cathedral's candles flickering, the clash of steel, and Becket's blood pooling on the sacred stones. The act shocks Christendom, staining Henry's reign. Pilgrims flock to Canterbury, Becket's tomb a shrine, while Henry, penitent, walks barefoot to atone, his pride humbled before the church. Yet his troubles multiply. His sons, Henry the young king, Richard, Geoffrey, and John, grow restless, their ambitions fanned by Eleanor's influence. In 1173, they rebel, backed by their mother and foreign allies. Imagine the betrayal. A king riding to war against his own blood, castles besieged, and Eleanor imprisoned for her defiance. Henry quells the revolt, but the wounds linger. His family, once his strength, becomes his crucible. The young king dies young, his promise unfulfilled, leaving Richard, later called the Lionheart, as heir. Picture Henry, graying now, standing alone in his chamber, his dreams of dynasty marred by discord. He strengthens England's laws, his courts dispensing justice from London to York, but his heart bears the scars of a fractured house. By 1189, his health fails, worn by ceaseless strife. Richard's final rebellion, allied with France's king, breaks Henry's spirit. He dies in Chinon, whispering names of his sons, his legacy a kingdom strong yet divided. The Plantagenet dynasty, born in Henry's iron will, now passes to Richard, a warrior born for glory. His reign will carry the crown to distant lands, but the seeds of family strife remain, ready to sprout anew. As you drift closer to slumber, imagine a torchlit castle, its walls echoing with the laughter and quarrels of a dynasty in its prime. What will Richard's reign bring? A blaze of triumph or the shadow of further turmoil? The crown's story, like the night, deepens with every turn. The year is 1189, and England's crown passes to a man forged in the fire of war. Richard, first of his name, known as the Lionheart, strides into history with the bearing of a warrior and the heart of a crusader. His father, Henry II, lies dead, his dreams of a united Plantagenet empire frayed by family strife. Now, as twilight settles over the land, a new chapter begins, one of glory, absence, and a document that will echo through the ages. As you nestle deeper into the folds of night, let the clatter of hooves and the distant call of trumpets draw you into a tale of adventure and reckoning, where the monarchy faces its greatest tests yet. Richard I is a king unlike his father, his spirit restless, his eyes fixed on horizons far beyond England's shores. Tall and golden-haired, he is a figure of legend, his sword arm renowned across Christendom. Picture him at his coronation in Westminster, the abbey's stone arches ringing with cheers, the crown heavy on his brow yet his heart already turning eastward. Richard's passion lies not in governing, but in the Third Crusade, a holy war to reclaim Jerusalem from Saladin's grasp. Within months of his crowning, he sets sail, leaving England in the care of regents. Imagine the port of Dover, ships creaking under the weight of knights and provisions, their sails catching the wind as Richard leads his army toward the sun-scorched lands of the Holy Land. His absence leaves England vulnerable. The kingdom, still raw from Henry's wars, simmers with discontent. Richard's brother John, ambitious and cunning, lurks in the shadows, his loyalty as fleeting as the morning mist. Picture John in a torchlit hall, his sharp eyes watching the regents, whispering promises to barons eager for power. Meanwhile, Richard's crusade blazes with triumphs and trials. At Acre, he storms the walls, his banner raised in victory. At Arsuf, he scatters Saladin's forces, his courage a beacon to his men. Yet, Jerusalem remains elusive, and the cost of war drains England's coffers. Taxes soar, and the people grumble, their fields heavy with harvest but their hearts heavy with want. Imagine a peasant woman, her hands calloused, gazing at a tax collector's cart, wondering if her king even knows her struggles. In 1192, Richard's journey home turns perilous. Captured by the Duke of Austria, he is handed to the Holy Roman Emperor, who demands a king's ransom, 150,000 marks, a fortune that bleeds England dry. Picture the kingdom rallying, merchants emptying purses, churches melting silver, even Eleanor, Richard's indomitable mother, orchestrating his release. Freed in 1194, Richard returns not to England but to his French lands, where John's intrigues have stirred rebellion. He forgives his brother, but the rift remains, a crack in the Plantagenet foundation. Richard spends his final years warring in France. His life ended in 1199 by a crossbow bolt at Chalice. Imagine the moment. A siege under a darkening sky, the bolt piercing his shoulder, and Richard, the Lionheart, falling, his legend sealed in blood. The crown passes to John, the least of Henry's sons, crowned in 1199. Where Richard was a lion, John is a fox, clever but distrusted, his reign a tapestry of missteps and defiance. Picture him in the Tower of London, his thin frame pacing, his mind racing to hold a fracturing empire. John's rule is plagued by loss. Normandy falls to the French king, Philip Augustus, in 1204, shrinking the Plantagenet domains. The barons, already resentful of heavy taxes, grow bolder, their halls buzzing with talk of rebellion. John's clash with the church deepens the crisis. His refusal to accept the Pope's choice for Archbishop of Canterbury leads to England's excommunication, churches falling silent, their bells stilled. Imagine a village priest, his altar bare whispering prayers for a land under spiritual siege. By 1215, the barons' patience snaps. They rise against John, forcing him to meet them at Runnymede, a meadow by the Thames. There on June 15, they seal the Magna Carta, a charter of liberties that curbs the king's power. Picture the scene. A summer day, the river glinting, barons in armor facing a reluctant king, parchment spread before him. The Magna Carta is no mere document. It is a covenant, demanding justice, fair trials, and limits on royal whim. Its clauses, written in Latin, speak of freemen's rights, of laws above the king. Though John signs under duress, his heart seethes, and soon he seeks to annul it, plunging England into civil war. The barons invite a French prince, Louis, to claim the throne, and England teeters on the edge of foreign rule. John's reign ends in 1216, his body failing amidst war and dysentery. Picture him, feverish in Newark Castle, his dreams of power dissolving like mist. His death leaves a child king, Henry III, just 9 years old, and a kingdom in chaos. The Magna Carta, though born in strife, becomes a cornerstone, its ideals whispered in courts and taverns, a spark that will ignite future struggles for justice. As you drift toward sleep, imagine standing at Runnymede, the grass soft underfoot, the charter's words carried on the breeze. What will become of this child king, and can the Plantagenets endure the storms ahead? The crown's tail twists onward, its weight heavier than ever. The year is 1216, and England lies fragile, like a tapestry frayed by war and ambition. A boy of 9, Henry III, ascends the throne, his small hands grasping a crown too heavy for his years. The land, scarred by John's misrule and the barons' rebellion, hungers for peace, yet the shadow of civil war lingers. The Magna Carta, sealed in the meadows of Runnymede, whispers promises of justice, but its ideals are tested by a kingdom on the brink. As you settle into the gentle embrace of night, let the flicker of torchlight and the rustle of parchment guide you through the reigns of Henry III and his son Edward I, a time when the Plantagenet dynasty reaches its zenith, weaving glory and strife into England's story. Henry III's coronation is a hurried affair, held in Gloucester Cathedral, far from the grandeur of Westminster. Picture the scene. A child king, his eyes wide with wonder, surrounded by grim-faced regents, their armor gleaming in the candlelight. The barons, led by William Marshal, a knight of unshakable loyalty, rally to protect the young king, driving out the French Prince Louis and restoring Plantagenet rule. Henry grows into a man of piety, his heart drawn to the splendor of faith. He rebuilds Westminster Abbey, its spires rising like prayers to the heavens, a monument to his devotion. Imagine the masons at work, their chisels shaping stone, while Henry dreams of a kingdom united under God and crown. Yet, Henry's reign, spanning 1216 to 1272, is fraught with tension. His desire for grandeur, lavish courts, foreign ventures, strains the treasury, and the barons grow restless. The Magna Carta, once a fragile pact, becomes a rallying cry for those who demand limits on royal power. By the 1250s, discontent boils over. Simon de Montfort, a charismatic earl and once Henry's ally, leads a rebellion demanding reforms. In 1258, the provisions of Oxford force Henry to share power with a council of barons, a bold curb on the monarchy. Picture the tense negotiations, parchment treaties spread across oak tables, as Henry, his pride stung, yields to save his crown. But peace is fleeting. Civil war erupts, and at the Battle of Lewes in 1264, de Montfort captures Henry, ruling briefly in his name. Imagine the battlefield. Banners torn, the clash of steel, and Henry, a king reduced to a pawn. The tide turns at Evesham in 1265, where Henry's son, Edward, proves his mettle. Leading loyalist forces, he crushes de Montfort's army, the rebel earl's body hacked apart in the mud. Picture Edward, tall and fierce, his sword raised, a prince stepping into his father's shadow. Henry, restored, rules until 1272, but his later years are quiet, his authority dimmed. When he dies, Edward ascends as Edward I, a king whose ambition will stretch the monarchy's reach. Known as Longshanks for his towering frame, Edward I, reigning from 1272 to 1307, is a warrior and a lawgiver, his presence commanding as the castles he builds. Edward's reign is a tapestry of conquest. In Wales, he wages war against Prince Llewellyn ap Gruffydd, whose defiance sparks rebellion. By 1283, Edward triumphs, annexing Wales into his realm. Picture Caernarfon Castle rising, its mighty towers a symbol of dominance, its walls echoing with the hammer of masons. Edward names his son, born in Caernarfon, Prince of Wales, a title that endures to this day. In Scotland, Edward seeks to extend his power, claiming overlordship after the death of its king. The Scots resist, led by figures like William Wallace, whose guerrilla war frustrates Edward's armies. Imagine the rugged highlands, mist curling over glens, as Wallace's men strike from the shadows, only to face Edward's wrath at Falkirk in 1298, where longbows rain death. Edward's rule is not just martial. He strengthens England's laws, earning the title English Justinian for his statutes that shape land and justice. Parliaments, crude but growing, gather barons and knights, their voices shaping the realm's course. Picture a great hall in Westminster, filled with debate, the air thick with the scent of wax and ambition. Yet, Edward's ambition comes at a cost. Heavy taxes fuel his wars, and whispers of discontent rise. His queen, Eleanor of Castile, is his steadfast partner, her death in 1290 leaving him grief-stricken. Imagine the crosses he erects in her memory, stone markers tracing her final journey, a king's love carved into the landscape. As Edward ages, his grip on Scotland falters. Robert the Bruce's rebellion kindles a new fire, one Edward cannot quench. In 1307, campaigning north, he dies, his body failing near the Scottish border. Picture his final moments. A war tent, the wind howling, as he urges his son Edward II to carry his bones into battle. The Plantagenet zenith, so grand under Edward I, now faces an uncertain dawn. What will become of this legacy under a son less suited to the crown? As you drift towards sleep, imagine the clash of swords fading into the mist, the weight of a kingdom resting on untested shoulders. The story of the crown twists onward, its glory tempered by shadows. The year is 1307, and England mourns the passing of Edward I, a king whose iron will forge an empire. His son, Edward II, steps into the shadow of a towering legacy, the crown heavy on a head unready for its weight. The land, stretched by wars in Wales and Scotland, now faces new trials, plagues that ravage the living and a war that will test the monarchy's resilience across a century. As you sink deeper into the quiet of night, let the distant toll of church bells and the clash of distant armies draw you into a tale of survival and strife, where the Plantagenet crown navigates a world reshaped by death and ambition. Edward II, crowned in 1307, is no Longshanks. Where his father was resolute, he is fickle, his court a stage for favorites rather than governance. Picture him, handsome but indecisive, in the great hall at Westminster, surrounded by nobles who whisper of his weakness. His favoritism toward Piers Gaveston, a charming but arrogant courtier, sparks resentment among the barons. Gaveston's titles and riches, bestowed by a doting king, inflame tensions, and by 1312, the barons seize and execute him, their blades a warning to the crown. Imagine the scene. A lonely hill, Gaveston's defiance fading as the axe falls, while Edward, miles away, weeps with rage and grief. The barons force reforms, curbing royal power, but Edward's heart remains unyielding, his rule a dance on the edge of rebellion. The king's troubles deepen in Scotland. Robert the Bruce, now a formidable leader, rallies the Scots, and in 1314 at Bannockburn, Edward's army suffers a crushing defeat. Picture the battlefield. Bogs swallowing knights, Scottish pikes gleaming, and Edward fleeing as his banners fall. The loss weakens his grip, and the barons grow bolder. By 1327, Edward's queen, Isabella, and her lover, Roger Mortimer, lead a rebellion. Edward is deposed, imprisoned in Berkeley Castle, where he meets a grim end. Rumors whisper of a red-hot poker, though the truth lies shrouded in shadow. Imagine the castle's damp walls, the flicker of a single torch, as a king's reign ends in silence, his cries unheard. The crown passes to Edward III, a boy of 14, crowned in 1327 under his mother's regency. By 1330, he seizes control, exiling Isabella and executing Mortimer. Picture the young king, his eyes fierce, stepping into power as the court watches in awe. Edward III, reigning until 1377, proves a king of vigor, his ambition rivaling his grandfather's. He strengthens the crown, but his reign is defined by a new war, one that will span generations. In 1337, he claims the French throne through his mother's lineage, igniting the 100 Years' War. Imagine the Channel ports, ships laden with archers, their longbows destined to reshape warfare. At Crecy in 1346, English longbowmen devastate French knights, their arrows a storm that humbles chivalry. Picture the field. Rain-soaked, littered with fallen banners, as Edward's son, the Black Prince, earns his spurs. Yet a darker shadow looms. In 1348, the Black Death sweeps England, a plague born on trade winds from the east. It strikes without mercy, claiming a third or more of the population. Imagine a village, once lively with market chatter, now silent but for the toll of a death knell. Bodies pile in carts, monasteries empty, and fields lie fallow. The monarchy, too, feels the plague's bite. Royal coffers dwindle as trade falters, and social unrest simmers. Peasants, their numbers thinned, demand higher wages, challenging the old order. Edward III, aging but resolute, navigates the crisis, his court a beacon of stability. He fosters chivalry, founding the Order of the Garter, its knights swearing oaths in Windsor's halls, their armor gleaming like stars. By the 1370s, Edward's health fades, his reign clouded by losses in France and corruption at home. His heir, the Black Prince, dies young, leaving a boy, Richard II, to inherit the crown in 1377. Picture Richard's coronation. A child of 10, dwarfed by the throne, his golden hair catching the light as nobles kneel. His reign begins in hope, but the scars of plague and war linger. In 1381, the peasants' revolt erupts, fueled by taxes and injustice. Imagine London's streets, ablaze with rebellion as Richard, barely 14, rides out to meet the rebels, his courage diffusing their rage. Yet his rule grows troubled, his temperament mercurial. He clashes with barons, his court riven by factionalism, setting the stage for strife. The 100 Years' War and the Black Death reshape England, testing the Plantagenet crown's strength. Richard II, a king of art and ambition, faces a kingdom restless for change. As you drift toward sleep, picture a windswept battlefield, the echo of longbows fading, and a young king gazing at a horizon heavy with portent. What will his reign bring? A flowering of culture or the seeds of ruin? The crown's story, like the night, grows ever more intricate, its path winding toward a storm. The year is 1377, and a boy king, Richard II, sits upon England's throne, his crown a fragile halo in a realm still reeling from plague and war. The 100 Years' War grinds on, its cost draining the treasury, while the scars of the Black Death linger in empty villages and restless hearts. Richard's reign, begun with such promise, soon falters under his own ambition and the growing discontent of his nobles. As you sink deeper into the velvet of night, let the clash of steel and the flicker of betrayal guide you into a tale of division, where the Plantagenet dynasty turns upon itself, and the crown becomes a prize in a bloody struggle known as the Wars of the Roses. Richard II, crowned at 10, grows into a king of contradictions, artistic, devout, yet prone to tyranny. His court is a tapestry of splendor, filled with poetry and pageantry, yet shadowed by suspicion. Picture him in Westminster Hall, his robes embroidered with gold, commissioning the magnificent hammer-beam roof that still arches above like a cathedral of power. But his favor toward courtiers like Robert de Vere sparks resentment among the barons, who see their influence wane. By 1387, the Lords Appellant, a group of powerful nobles, rise against him, crushing his allies at Radcot Bridge. Imagine the winter fog, the clash of armored knights, and Richard, humiliated, forced to bend to their will. Though he regains control, his heart hardens, and by 1399 his rule grows despotic. He exiles and dispossesses his cousin, Henry Bolingbroke, seizing his lands in a fatal misstep. Henry, son of John of Gaunt, returns from exile, rallying support. In 1399, he deposes Richard, who is imprisoned in Pontefract Castle, his fate sealed. Some say by starvation, others by darker means. Picture the cold stone cell, Richard's once proud figure wasted, his dreams of divine kingship fading. Henry is crowned Henry IV, the first Lancastrian king, his claim rooted in might more than right. His reign, from 1399 to 1413, is troubled. Rebellions flare, led by figures like Owen Glendower in Wales and the Percy family in the north. At Shrewsbury in 1403, Henry's forces clash with the Percys, their banners torn in the summer heat. Imagine the young Prince Hal, later Henry V, proving his valor, his sword flashing as he secures his father's throne. Yet Henry IV's health fails, his body racked by illness, his crown a burden he passes to his son. Henry V, crowned in 1413, is a king of fire and purpose. His reign blazes with the renewed vigor of the 100 Years' War. At Agincourt in 1415, his outnumbered army triumphs, English longbows cutting down French knights in a muddy field. Picture the rain-soaked chaos, arrows falling like a storm, and Henry, armored and resolute, rallying his men. His victory secures the Treaty of Troyes, naming him heir to the French throne, and he marries Catherine of Valois, their union a fleeting hope for peace. But Henry's glory is brief. He dies in 1422, leaving an infant son, Henry VI, to inherit both crowns. Imagine the royal cradle, a baby king surrounded by ambitious regents, as England and France teeter on the edge of chaos. Henry VI, crowned at 9 months, grows into a gentle but weak king, his piety no match for the turbulent times. By the 1450s, England's losses in France, coupled with Henry's mental frailty, ignite discontent. The House of York, led by Richard, Duke of York, claims the throne through a rival Plantagenet line. Thus begins the Wars of the Roses, named for the white rose of York and the red of Lancaster. Picture the rival banners. White roses blooming on armor, red roses staining battlefields. The conflict erupts in 1455 at St. Albans, where Yorkist forces triumph, but the war spirals into decades of bloodshed. Margaret of Anjou, Henry's fierce queen, rallies the Lancastrians, her will unbreakable. Imagine her, a lioness in exile, plotting to save her son's birthright. The tide shifts at Towton in 1461, a brutal clash in a snowstorm, where Edward, son of York, seizes the crown as Edward IV. Picture the field, snow red with blood, thousands fallen as Edward's star rises. Henry VI is deposed, imprisoned, and later murdered, his line broken. Yet Edward IV's reign is not secure. His marriage to Elizabeth Woodville, a commoner, alienates allies like the Earl of Warwick, the kingmaker, who briefly restores Henry VI in 1470. Edward reclaims the throne at Barnet and Tewkesbury, battles that cement Yorkist rule but leave scars deep in England's soul. Imagine the fog at Barnet, Warwick's betrayal ending in his death, and Edward, bloodied but victorious, striding toward a fragile peace. Edward IV's death in 1483 leaves his young son, Edward V, as king, but his uncle, Richard III, seizes power, the boy and his brother vanishing in the Tower, history's Princes in the Tower. Picture the grim fortress, its shadows hiding a mystery unsolved. Richard III, crowned in 1483, faces rebellion, his reign darkened by suspicion. In 1485, at Bosworth Field, Henry Tudor, a distant Lancastrian claimant, defeats Richard, who falls fighting fiercely. Imagine the clash. Richard's charge, his crown lost in a hawthorn bush as a new dynasty dawns. The Wars of the Roses, a tempest of blood and betrayal, end, but at what cost to the crown? As you drift towards sleep, picture Bosworth's Field, the silence after battle, and Henry Tudor lifting a fallen crown. What will his reign bring? A healing peace or new struggles for a weary land? The story of England's monarchy, like the night, weaves on, its threads stained with roses red and white. The year is 1485, and the fields of Bosworth lie silent, strewn with the fallen and the echoes of a war that has torn England apart. The Wars of the Roses, with their bitter clash of red and white, have ended, and a new figure stands victorious. Henry Tudor, a man of distant Lancastrian blood, now crowned Henry VII. His claim is thin, his crown won by the sword, yet he heralds the dawn of a new dynasty, the Tudors. As you nestle deeper into the quiet of night, let the flicker of torchlight and the rustle of a new banner guide you into a tale of cunning, unity, and a monarchy reborn from the ashes of strife. Henry VII, crowned on a windswept hill after Bosworth, is no warrior king like his predecessors. He is a man of calculation, his sharp eyes missing nothing, his mind weaving plans to secure a fragile throne. Picture him in Westminster, the crown heavy on his brow, as he kneels in the abbey where so many Plantagenets were crowned. The land he inherits is bruised, its nobles restless, their loyalties as shifting as the tides. Yorkist pretenders, Lambert Simnel and Perkin Warbeck, rise to challenge him, claiming to be lost princes. Imagine the tension in London streets, whispers of rebellion mingling with the clatter of carts, as Henry's spies root out conspiracies. With ruthless precision, he crushes these threats, his justice swift, his mercy sparing. Simnel is pardoned, Warbeck executed, their challenges fading like mist before the sun. Henry's greatest triumph is not in battle, but in healing a divided realm. To bind the wounds of the roses, he marries Elizabeth of York, uniting red and white in a new emblem, the Tudor rose. Picture their wedding, the chapel aglow with candles, Elizabeth's golden hair catching the light, her union with Henry a symbol of peace. Their court, though frugal compared to Plantagenet's splendor, hums with purpose. Henry strengthens the crown's coffers, his treasury filled through careful taxation and fines on rebellious lords. He reforms the Star Chamber, a court to curb noble power, its sessions held in a room where painted stars gleam on the ceiling. Imagine the accused, standing before stern judges, their fates sealed by Henry's unyielding will. His foreign policy is a delicate dance. Alliances through marriage secure England's place in Europe. His son Arthur weds Catherine of Aragon, tying England to Spain, while his daughter Margaret marries James IV of Scotland, planting seeds of future union. Picture the diplomatic envoys, their cloaks heavy with velvet, crossing seas to forge these bonds. Yet, tragedy strikes. Arthur dies young in 1502, leaving Catherine a widow and Henry's plans shaken. Imagine the king, his face lined with grief, pacing the halls of Richmond Palace, his dreams of dynasty tested. His second son, young Henry, becomes heir, a boy whose future will blaze with consequence. Henry VII's reign, from 1485 to 1509, is a masterclass in survival. He builds a navy, strengthens trade, and restores stability, his rule a bridge from chaos to order. Yet he is not beloved. His taxes, though necessary, stir grumbling. His spies, ever watchful, breed fear. Picture a merchant in a London tavern, his voice low, wary of the king's agents. When Henry dies in 1509, his legacy is a throne secure but a people cautious. The crown passes to his son, Henry VIII, a youth of 18 whose vigor promises a new era. Imagine his coronation, a golden-haired giant, his laughter booming, the crowd roaring as England dreams of glory. Henry VII's reign lays the foundation for Tudor greatness, but it is his son who will redefine the monarchy. The Tudor dawn, born in the shadow of war, now brightens, its light casting long shadows. Picture a young king, his eyes alight with ambition, stepping into a world where faith, power, and love will collide. As you drift towards sleep, imagine the Tudor rose blooming in a garden once torn by thorns, its petals red and white, its roots deep in a land reborn. What will Henry VII's reign bring? A golden age or a storm that shakes the very soul of England? The crown's story, like the night, unfurls with secrets yet to be told. The year is 1509, and England stirs under the dawn of a new king. Henry VIII, barely 18, ascends the throne, his broad shoulders and golden hair a beacon of hope for a nation weary of his father's cautious rule. The court buzzes with youth and vigor, its halls filled with music, jousts, and the promise of glory. Yet beneath this radiant surface lies a man whose passions, love, faith, and power, will reshape the monarchy, tearing England from its ancient ties to Rome and setting the crown on a path of upheaval. As you sink deeper into the hush of night, let the clatter of tournament lances and the murmur of royal councils guide you into a tale of ambition and transformation, where one king's desires alter the course of history. Henry VIII is a king of contradictions, a scholar who pens theological treatises, a warrior who dreams of conquest, and a lover whose heart shifts like the tides. Picture him at Greenwich Palace, his laughter echoing as he tilts in the lists, his armor gleaming under a summer sun. His early reign is a festival of promise. He marries Catherine of Aragon, his brother's widow, their union blessed by the Pope to secure England's alliance with Spain. Imagine their wedding, the chapel fragrant with incense, Catherine's dark eyes steady as she vows to be his queen. Together, they embody a new golden age, their court a stage for scholars like Erasmus and artists weaving tapestries of splendor. Yet the shadow of an heirless marriage looms. Catherine's pregnancies end in sorrow, miscarriages and stillbirths, save for one daughter, Mary, born in 1516. Henry, desperate for a son to secure the Tudor line, grows restless. By the 1520s, Henry's gaze falls on Anne Boleyn, a dark-eyed courtier whose wit and grace captivate him. His desire for her becomes an obsession, one that will fracture England's soul. Catherine, steadfast and pious, refuses to yield her place, and the Pope, bound by politics, denies Henry's plea for an annulment. Picture the king, pacing his chambers, his temper flaring as letters from Rome bring no relief. This impasse births the king's great matter, a crisis that consumes his court. Henry, guided by advisors like Thomas Wolsey and Thomas Cromwell, begins to question the Pope's authority. Why should a distant pontiff dictate the fate of England's crown? Imagine the candlelit councils, scholars poring over ancient texts, as Henry's mind turns to a radical solution: breaking with Rome. In 1533, Henry defies the Pope, declaring himself supreme head of the Church of England. The act of supremacy severs centuries of tradition, making the king, not Rome, the arbiter of faith. Picture the monasteries, their bells silenced, as royal agents seize their wealth, their treasures melted into coin for Henry's coffers. Anne Boleyn, now his queen, gives birth to a daughter, Elizabeth, in 1533, but no son. Henry's passion for Anne sours, her sharp tongue and failure to produce a male heir fueling his discontent. In 1536, she is accused of adultery and treason, her fate sealed in a trial many call unjust. Imagine the Tower of London, its walls cold and unyielding, as Anne kneels before the executioner's sword, her grace unshaken even in death. Henry's marriages multiply, each a chapter in his quest for an heir. Jane Seymour, his third queen, delivers a son, Edward, in 1537, but dies in childbirth, her loss a blow to Henry's heart. Picture him, grieving beside her bier, the joy of an heir tempered by sorrow. Subsequent marriages, to Anne of Cleves, Catherine Howard, and Catherine Parr, bring political alliances, scandal, and stability, but no more surviving children. Henry's court, once vibrant, grows shadowed by his temper and failing health. His Reformation reshapes England. The Bible is translated into English, churches stripped of Catholic splendor, yet dissent simmers, both from Catholics loyal to Rome and Protestants pushing for deeper reform. Henry's reign, from 1509 to 1547, is a crucible. He strengthens the navy, fortifies the coasts, and dreams of reviving the 100 Years' War, though his French campaigns yield little. His break with Rome empowers the crown, but at a cost. Religious division scars the land, monasteries lie in ruins, and the people whisper of a king grown tyrannical. Picture a village church, its stained glass shattered, as a priest reads from a New English Bible, his flock torn between old faith and new. By 1547, Henry's body fails, his once mighty frame bloated and pained. He dies at Whitehall, his last thoughts on his legacy, leaving the crown to his frail son, Edward VI, a boy of 9. The Tudor dynasty, forged in Henry VII's cunning, now rests on a child's shoulders, its future uncertain in a land divided by faith. Henry VII's reign has remade the monarchy, binding church and state in a way none before dared. As you drift towards sleep, imagine the tower's walls, echoing with Anne's final words, and a boy king preparing to face a turbulent realm. What will Edward's reign bring? A deepening of reform or new shadows over the Tudor crown? The story, like the night, weaves on, its threads taut with promise and peril. The year is 1558, and England stands at a crossroads, its heart torn by religious strife and the weight of a fragile crown. Edward VI, the boy king, is dead, his brief reign a flicker of Protestant zeal. His sister Mary, whose Catholic restoration bathed the land in blood and fire, has followed him to the grave. Now the throne passes to Elizabeth, daughter of Henry VII and Anne Boleyn, a woman of 25 whose wit and will shall forge a golden age. As you sink deeper into the velvet hush of night, let the rustle of silk and the distant strum of lutes guide you into a tale of defiance, splendor, and a queen whose reign will shine like a beacon through the ages. Elizabeth I ascends in a kingdom divided, its people weary of purges and uncertainty. Picture her coronation in Westminster Abbey, January 1559, her auburn hair catching the candlelight, her eyes sharp with resolve beneath the heavy crown. She is no ordinary monarch, unmarried, untested, yet armed with a mind honed by years of danger. As a child, she navigated the treacherous court of her father, her mother's execution a shadow on her heart. Declared a bastard, then restored, she survived plots and imprisonment under Mary, emerging with a strength tempered like steel. Imagine her at Hatfield House, receiving news of her accession, her breath steady as she whispers, "This is the Lord's doing, and it is marvelous in our eyes." Her first challenge is faith. England's soul is split. Catholics cling to Rome, Protestants demand reform, and both watch her every move. Elizabeth, pragmatic yet devout, crafts a middle path, the Elizabethan settlement. The Church of England, Protestant in doctrine but retaining Catholic trappings, seeks to unite her people. Picture parish churches, their altars restored, where priests read from the Book of Common Prayer, its words a balm to a divided flock. Yet her settlement sparks dissent. Catholics plot, seeing her as a heretic queen, Puritans push for purer reform. Elizabeth, ever watchful, relies on her spymaster, Francis Walsingham, whose network of agents weaves a web to snare her enemies. The queen's unmarried state becomes a weapon. Suitors, Spanish, French, Austrian, vie for her hand, their envoys filling her court with flattery and gifts. Picture Greenwich Palace, its halls alive with dances, where Elizabeth, in gowns of silver and gold, plays the game of courtship without yielding her independence. She declares herself married to England, her virgin queen persona a shield against foreign dominance. Yet her heart is not untouched. Robert Dudley, her childhood friend and dashing courtier, stirs whispers of romance. Imagine them riding together, her laughter bright, though duty keeps her from his arms. Her choice to remain unwed ensures the crown's power rests with her alone, but it leaves the succession uncertain, a shadow over her reign. Beyond England's shores, threats loom. Spain, under Philip II, once Mary's husband, eyes the Protestant queen with suspicion. The Pope declares Elizabeth excommunicate, licensing rebellion. In 1588, the Spanish Armada sails, a vast fleet bent on invasion. Picture the Channel, waves crashing against Spanish galleons as English ships, nimble and fierce, harry their foe. Elizabeth, in armor at Tilbury, rallies her troops. "I have the heart and stomach of a king." Storms and English fire scatter the Armada, a victory that cements her legend. Imagine the cliffs of Dover, beacons blazing, as England breathes free, its queen a symbol of defiance. Elizabeth's court is a crucible of culture. Shakespeare's plays light up the globe, their words weaving tales of love and power. Poets like Spenser sing her praises, crafting her as Gloriana, a near-mythic queen. Picture London streets, alive with merchants and players, the Thames glittering under a harvest moon. Yet her reign is not without cost. Ireland rebels under Hugh O'Neill, its bogs swallowing English armies. The execution of Mary, Queen of Scots, in 1587, after years of plots, haunts Elizabeth, her cousin's death a necessity, yet a wound to her soul. Imagine Fotheringhay Castle, Mary's final moments, her rosary clutched as the axe falls, while Elizabeth, miles away, weeps in private. By the 1590s, age creeps upon her. Her favorites, Dudley, then Essex fall to death or disgrace. Picture her, her face painted to hide time's marks, dancing at court to defy her years. Her final years, until 1603, are marked by economic strain and succession fears. Yet her legacy is unshakable. England, once divided, stands united, its navy strong, its spirit bold. On her deathbed, she names James Stuart, son of Mary, Queen of Scots, as her heir, ensuring a peaceful transition. Imagine her final breath at Richmond Palace, the room hushed as a golden age fades. Elizabeth's reign, a tapestry of courage and cunning, leaves England transformed. As you drift toward sleep, picture her standing at Tilbury, her voice carrying over the wind, a queen eternal. What will James bring to a throne shaped by such a monarch? The Tudor light dims, but the crown's story weaves on, its next chapter heavy with new struggles. The year is 1603, and England mourns the passing of Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen whose golden reign held a fractured nation together. Her death leaves a throne without a direct heir, and the crown passes to James Stuart, King of Scotland, son of Mary, Queen of Scots. As James VI of Scotland becomes James I of England, a new dynasty, the Stuarts takes root, uniting two crowns under one rule. Yet this union brings not peace but tension, as faith, power, and rebellion test the monarchy's strength. As you nestle deeper into the quiet of night, let the flicker of candlelight and the echo of whispered plots guide you into a tale of struggle, where the crown faces its darkest hour, and a king's head falls to the axe. James I, crowned in 1603, steps into a kingdom buzzing with expectation. Picture him, a scholarly man with a slight limp, his Scottish accent foreign in Westminster's halls, his coronation a blend of English pomp and Scottish pride. He dreams of a true union, styling himself King of Great Britain. But England and Scotland remain wary partners, their laws and churches distinct. James is a man of ideas, his treatises on divine right proclaiming the king as God's lieutenant, answerable to none but heaven. Yet his court is a maze of intrigue, its air thick with the scent of wax and ambition. Favorites like Robert Carr and George Villiers, later Duke of Buckingham, rise to power, their influence sparking resentment among nobles. Imagine a banquet at Whitehall, laughter masking whispered grudges, as James lavishes gifts on his chosen few. The king's reign is shadowed by religious strife. Elizabeth's settlement left Catholics and Puritans dissatisfied, and James inherits their unrest. In 1605, the Gunpowder Plot shakes the realm, a Catholic conspiracy to blow up Parliament and the king. Picture the dark cellars beneath Westminster, barrels of gunpowder stacked, and Guy Fawkes, his lantern dim, caught before the spark. James, shaken but resolute, tightens laws against Catholics, yet seeks peace with Spain through a treaty ending decades of war. His court, meanwhile, flourishes with culture. Shakespeare's tragedies fill the globe, and the King James Bible, commissioned by the king, weaves scripture into English hearts. Imagine a scribe, his quills scratching, crafting words that will echo for centuries. James's foreign policy falters as Europe slides toward the 30 Years' War. His dream of marrying his son Charles to a Spanish princess fails, alienating allies and draining the treasury. When James dies in 1625, his son Charles I inherits a restless kingdom. Picture Charles, slight and reserved, crowned in 1625, his belief in divine right as firm as his father's but his touch less deft. His marriage to Henrietta Maria, a French Catholic, stirs Protestant fears, and his reliance on favorites like Buckingham breeds distrust. Charles's need for funds, without Parliament's consent, sparks outrage. He imposes ship money, a tax that engages merchants and gentry alike. Imagine a coastal town, its people grumbling as tax collectors demand coin for a navy they scarcely see. By the 1640s, Charles's missteps ignite rebellion. His attempt to enforce Anglican practices in Scotland triggers the bishops' wars, draining his coffers further. When he recalls Parliament to fund his campaigns, it demands reforms, led by men like John Pym. The king, defiant, dissolves it, but rebellion in Ireland and mounting debts force him to call it again, the Long Parliament, unyielding in its power. By 1642, England fractures into civil war, royalists loyal to Charles against parliamentarians seeking to curb the crown. Picture the fields of Edgehill, the first clash, where banners snap in the wind and brother turns against brother, the land stained with English blood. The First Civil War 1642-1646 sees Charles's forces falter. Parliament's new model army, led by Oliver Cromwell, proves disciplined and fierce. At Naseby in 1645, the royalists are crushed, their standards trampled. Charles, defeated, surrenders to the Scots, who hand him to Parliament. Imagine him, a captive king, his fine clothes tattered, his divine right mocked by his jailers. The Second Civil War in 1648, a brief royalist flare, ends in defeat, and Parliament, now dominated by radicals, puts Charles on trial. In 1649, at Whitehall, he faces the axe. Picture the scaffold, a January chill, the crowd hushed as Charles, calm and regal, declares, "I go from a corruptible to an incorruptible crown." His execution shocks Europe, the monarchy abolished, England a commonwealth under Cromwell's stern hand. The Commonwealth, then protectorate, lasts until 1660, but the crown's absence haunts the land. Cromwell's rule, austere and military, lacks the monarchy's mystique. When he dies in 1658, his son Richard falters, and the nation yearns for stability. Picture London's streets, weary of Puritan rule, as whispers of restoration grow. Charles's son, Charles II, waits in exile, his fate uncertain. As you drift towards sleep, imagine the scaffold at Whitehall, its boards still stained, and a kingdom longing for its king. What will restoration bring? A return to glory or new trials for a crown reborn? The Stuart story, like the night, pulses with uncertainty, its next chapter yet to unfold. The year is 1660, and England, weary from the iron rule of the Commonwealth, yearns for the familiar weight of a crown. The execution of Charles I has left a scar, the nation adrift without its monarchy, its soul restless under Oliver Cromwell's austere protectorate. His death in 1658, followed by his son Richard's faltering rule, opens a door to hope. Charles II, son of the martyred king, waits in exile, his heart set on reclaiming his birthright. As you sink deeper into the quiet of night, let the cheer of welcoming crowds and the flicker of royal banners guide you into a tale of restoration, revelry, and a revolution that will redefine the monarchy's power. Charles II, proclaimed king in May 1660, returns to London amid jubilation. Picture the city, its streets alive with bonfires, bells pealing from every church as the king rides through, his dark eyes gleaming with wit and relief. His coronation in 1661 is a spectacle of renewal, Westminster Abbey aglow with gold and velvet, the crown a symbol of a kingdom reborn. Charles, dubbed the Merry Monarch, brings a breath of lightness after years of Puritan gloom. His court is a whirlwind of pleasure, dances, theaters, and mistresses like Nell Gwynn, whose laughter echoes in Whitehall's halls. Imagine a masque, the air heavy with perfume, as courtiers swirl in silks, their revelry a defiance of the past. Yet Charles's reign, from 1660 to 1685, is no mere festival. He navigates a kingdom still divided by faith and politics. The Restoration settlement restores the Church of England, but Catholics and Protestant dissenters face exclusion, their discontent simmering. Charles, pragmatic and cunning, seeks peace through diplomacy, balancing alliances with France and the Dutch. His secret Treaty of Dover in 1670, promising aid to France and a private pledge to convert to Catholicism, is a gamble kept from his people. Picture him in a candlelit chamber, signing the treaty, his face unreadable as he weighs loyalty against survival. Wars with the Dutch test his navy, but victories like the capture of New York, named for his brother James, bolster England's reach. Plagues and fires test Charles's reign. In 1665, the Great Plague ravages London, its streets silent but for the rattle of death carts. Imagine a city shrouded in fear, churchyards overflowing as Charles retreats to safety, his heart heavy for his capital. The Great Fire of 1666 follows, reducing London to ash. Picture the flames, leaping from Pudding Lane, as St. Paul's Cathedral burns, its lead roof melting into the streets. Charles joins the firefight, bucket in hand, his presence a spark of hope. From the ashes, Christopher Wren rebuilds, his new St. Paul's a monument to resilience. Yet, Charles's later years grow tense. The Popish plot, a fabricated Catholic conspiracy, whips up paranoia, and Parliament clashes with the king over his brother James's Catholic faith. Charles dies in 1685, his conversion to Catholicism a final secret, leaving the throne to James II. Picture James, dour and devout, crowned in 1685, his reign a stark contrast to his brother's charm. His open Catholicism alarms a Protestant nation, and his push for religious tolerance, noble in intent, seems a step toward Catholic dominance. Imagine a London tavern, whispers of fear mingling with ale, as James's policies spark distrust. His declaration of indulgence, granting freedom to Catholics and dissenters, alienates the Anglican establishment. When his son is born in 1688, a Catholic heir, panic grips the realm. Nobles invite William of Orange, James's Protestant son-in-law, to intervene. The Glorious Revolution of 1688 unfolds, a bloodless coup that reshapes the monarchy. William and his wife Mary, James's daughter, land in Devon, their forces swelling as James's allies desert him. Picture Torbay's shores, Dutch ships gleaming, as England's fate shifts without a battle. James flees to France, his crown abandoned, his dreams of Catholic restoration shattered. William III and Mary II are crowned joint monarchs in 1689, their reign sealed by the Bill of Rights. This document, etched in Parliament's resolve, curbs royal power, ensuring no king can rule without consent. Imagine the Commons, candlelit, as lawmakers pen a new contract between crown and people, the monarchy now constitutional. William and Mary's reign, from 1689 to 1694 for Mary, and 1702 for William, stabilizes England but brings new wars. William's battles against France, part of the 9 Years' War, stretch the treasury, but his victories secure Protestant rule. Mary's death in 1694 leaves William grieving, his rule lonelier but resolute. When he dies, the crown passes to Anne, Mary's sister, whose reign sees the 1707 Act of Union, merging England and Scotland into Great Britain. Picture Edinburgh and London, their parliaments united, a single crown binding two nations. Anne's many pregnancies end in loss, leaving no heir, and in 1714, the throne passes to the Hanoverians. The Stuart era, from revelry to revolution, redefines the crown's place. As you drift towards sleep, imagine William and Mary's coronation, the Bill of Rights a new foundation, and a kingdom stepping into a modern age. What will the Hanoverians bring to a throne now bound by law? The story of the monarchy, like the night, weaves on, its threads gleaming with change and challenge. The year is 1714, and England, now part of the newly forged Great Britain, stands at the threshold of a new era. The Stuart line, once vibrant with the revelry of Charles II and the defiance of James II, has faded with Queen Anne's death, her many pregnancies yielding no surviving heir. The crown passes to a distant German cousin, George I of Hanover, a Protestant prince chosen to secure the legacy of the Glorious Revolution. As you sink deeper into the stillness of night, let the clatter of coaches and the hum of a growing empire guide you into a tale of transformation, where the monarchy adapts to a world of commerce, conquest, and constitutional balance. George I, crowned in 1714, arrives in London a stranger to his realm. Picture him, a reserved man of 54, his German tongue thick, stepping onto English soil as crowds watch with curiosity rather than fervor. His coronation in Westminster Abbey is a formality, lacking the warmth of Stuart pageantry, yet it marks the dawn of the Hanoverian dynasty. George's heart lies in Hanover, where he spends much of his reign, leaving governance to ministers like Robert Walpole, often called Britain's first prime minister. Imagine Walpole in the Commons, his shrewd eyes scanning MPs, weaving a system where Parliament, not the Crown, holds sway. The monarchy, bound by the Bill of Rights, becomes a symbol, its power tempered by law. George I's reign, from 1714 to 1727, sees Britain's star rise. The South Sea Bubble of 1720, A financial frenzy bursts, shaking the economy, but Walpole's steady hand restores trust. Picture London's coffee houses, abuzz with merchants and speculators, their dreams of wealth dashed yet reborn. George's foreign policy, tied to Hanover, draws Britain into European alliances, while trade flourishes, fueled by colonies in America and the Caribbean. The monarchy, though distant, benefits from this wealth, its coffers swelling with the spoils of empire. Yet, George's estrangement from his son, the future George II, sows discord, their feud a whisper in courtly circles. George II, crowned in 1727, is more engaged, his temper fiery but his rule pragmatic. Picture him, stout and red-faced, reviewing troops, his love of military pomp a nod to his Hanoverian roots. His reign, until 1760, sees Britain's empire expand. The War of the Austrian Succession and the 7 Years' War pit Britain against France, with victories in India and Canada. Imagine the plains of Quebec, 1759, where General Wolfe falls but secures Canada for Britain, the Union Jack rising over new lands. At home, the 1745 Jacobite Rebellion, led by Bonnie Prince Charlie, a Stuart claimant, threatens the crown. Picture the Highlands, bagpipes wailing as rebels march, only to be crushed at Culloden, the last pitched battle on British soil. George II, though safe, is a distant figure, his court overshadowed by Parliament's growing power. George III, crowned in 1760, seeks to reclaim royal influence. Young and earnest, he dreams of ruling as a patriot king. Picture him at Kew, his gardens a refuge, his mind sharp with ideas of reform. His reign, spanning 1760 to 1820, is the longest yet, but it is marked by triumph and tragedy. The American Revolution, sparked by taxes and colonial unrest, sees Britain lose its 13 colonies by 1783. Imagine Boston's harbors, tea crates sinking, as cries of liberty challenge the crown. George, stubborn but devoted, bears the loss, his heart heavy for a fractured empire. Yet Britain's reach grows elsewhere. India under the East India Company, Australia with its fledgling colonies, the empire stretching under a sun that never sets. At home, George III's reign sees the monarchy's role evolve. Parliament, led by figures like William Pitt, holds the reins, while the king's influence wanes. His bouts of illness, later called porphyria, cloud his later years, his mind wandering as his son, the future George IV, waits in the wings. Picture George III, his eyes vacant in Windsor's halls, a king beloved yet pitied. His son, George IV, crowned in 1820, is a flamboyant contrast, his regency era a time of extravagance. Imagine Brighton Pavilion, its domes gleaming. As the prince indulges in art and pleasure, his reign brief and troubled until 1830. William IV, crowned in 1830, is a sailor king, his bluff manner a relief after George IV's excess. His reign sees the 1832 Reform Act, expanding the vote and cementing Parliament's dominance. Picture the Commons, MPs cheering as the bill passes, the monarchy now a ceremonial anchor. When William dies in 1837, the crown passes to Victoria, a girl of 18, whose reign will define an age. Imagine her, petite and resolute, in Kensington Palace, her diary open as she vows to serve. The Hanoverians, from George I's aloofness to Victoria's dawn, guide Britain into modernity, the monarchy a steady heartbeat in a growing empire. As you drift towards sleep, picture Victoria, young and untested, stepping into a world of industry and empire. What will her reign bring? A pinnacle of glory or new challenges for a crown now bound to its people? The story of the monarchy, like the night, pulses with promise, its next chapter ready to unfold. The year is 1837, and a young woman, barely 18, awakens in Kensington Palace to the news that she is queen. Victoria, the last of the Hanoverians, steps into a world transformed by industry, empire, and the stirrings of democracy. The monarchy, once the iron heart of England's governance, now beats in rhythm with Parliament, its power ceremonial yet potent in its symbolism. As you settle into the gentle embrace of night, Let the hum of steam engines and the distant chime of Big Ben guide you through the final chapter of this thousand-year tale, where the crown evolves from divine right to a beacon of continuity in a rapidly changing world. Victoria's reign, spanning 1837 to 1901, is an era of unprecedented reach. Picture her, petite yet resolute, her black mourning dress a constant after the death of her beloved Albert in 1861, her diaries filled with devotion to her people. Her empire stretches across the globe, India, Canada, Australia, and beyond, its wealth fueling Britain's rise as a global power. Imagine Bombay's bustling ports or the vast plains of the Punjab, where the Union Jack flies, a symbol of Victoria, Empress of India from 1876. At home, the Industrial Revolution reshapes Britain. Factories hum, railways crisscross the land, and London's streets pulse with trade. Yet, Victoria's role is not to rule but to inspire. Parliament, led by giants like Gladstone and Disraeli, holds the reins, while the Queen advises, warns, and mourns in private, her heart tied to Albert's memory. Her long reign sees the monarchy become a family affair. Her 9 children marry into Europe's royal houses, earning her the title Grandmother of Europe. Picture Buckingham Palace, its nurseries alive with laughter, as Victoria's grandchildren play, their futures entwined with crowns from Germany to Russia. Yet her later years are shadowed by isolation. She withdraws, earning the nickname Widow of Windsor, her black veils a shield against a world moving too fast. By 1901, her death marks the end of an era, her body laid to rest beside Albert, the nation weeping for a queen who seemed eternal. The crown passes to Edward VII, crowned in 1902, a jovial king whose brief reign bridges the Victorian age to modernity. Picture him, portly and bearded, charming European courts, his diplomacy easing tensions before the Great War. His death in 1910 brings George V, whose reign, until 1936, navigates a world at war. The First World War, from 1914 to 1918, tests Britain's resolve, its trenches swallowing a generation. Imagine George visiting troops, his presence a quiet strength, as he renames the Royal House Windsor, shedding its German roots amid anti-German sentiment. His reign sees the Statute of Westminster in 1931, granting autonomy to dominions like Canada and Australia, the empire evolving into a commonwealth. The monarchy faces a crisis in 1936. Edward VII, crowned in January, abdicates by year's end for love of Wallis Simpson, an American divorcee. Picture him, his voice steady on the radio, declaring he cannot rule without the woman I love. The abdication shakes the crown, its mystique tested by personal choice. His brother George VI takes the throne, a reluctant king whose quiet courage steadies Britain through the Second World War. Imagine him, stammer overcome, speaking to the nation as bombs fall on London, his Queen Elizabeth by his side, their resolve a beacon in the Blitz. His death in 1952 brings his daughter, Elizabeth II, to the throne, a young queen whose reign will span a transformative century. Elizabeth II, crowned in 1953, becomes the monarchy's enduring face. Picture her coronation, televised to millions, her youth a symbol of renewal in a post-war world. Her reign, from 1952 to 2022, sees Britain shed its empire, embrace modernity, and navigate social change. The Commonwealth grows, a voluntary union of nations, while at home, the monarchy becomes a cultural touchstone. Imagine her, steadfast through decades, her corgis at her heels, meeting prime ministers from Churchill to Truss. Scandals, divorces, Diana's death in 1997 test the crown's image, but Elizabeth's duty holds firm. Picture her golden jubilee in 2002, crowds cheering, as she renews her pledge to serve. Her death in 2022, after 70 years, marks the end of an era. Charles III, her son, ascends, his reign beginning in a world of digital media and global challenges. Imagine him at Balmoral, his mother's memory heavy, as he vows to uphold her legacy. The monarchy, now a symbol of continuity, faces questions of relevance, yet its rituals, coronations, jubilees bind Britain to its past. Picture Westminster Abbey, its stones worn by 1,000 years, still echoing with the oaths of kings and queens. As you drift toward sleep, imagine Elizabeth II's final wave from Buckingham Palace, the crowd's roar fading into history. The monarchy, from Alfred's warrior kings to Charles II's quiet stewardship, has woven a thread through England's soul, its crown a mirror of triumph, tragedy, and resilience. What lies ahead for this ancient institution, in a world so unlike the one it began in? The story closes, yet its echoes linger, like a dream that carries you into the night. As the final echoes of Charles II's coronation fade, we stand at the end of a 1,000-year journey through England's monarchy, a saga woven with the threads of ambition, sacrifice, and enduring legacy. From the mist-shrouded halls of Anglo-Saxon kings, where Alfred dreamed of a united realm, to the glittering courts of the Tudors, where Elizabeth I defied empires, we have walked through centuries of triumph and turmoil. We've stood on the blood-soaked fields of Hastings, felt the weight of the Magna Carta's promises, and witnessed the crown's transformation from divine right to a symbol of continuity in a modern world. Picture, one last time, the ancient stones of Westminster Abbey, their silent witness to a millennium of oaths, where each monarch has left a mark on England's soul. This journey has been more than a recounting of kings and queens. It is a tapestry of human striving, where power and duty collide, where love and betrayal shape destinies. From William the Conqueror's iron will to Victoria's imperial grandeur, from the chaos of the Wars of the Roses to the quiet resilience of Elizabeth II, the monarchy has been a mirror reflecting England's heart, its faith, its struggles, its dreams. Even now, as Charles III navigates a world of change, the crown remains a beacon, its rituals tying the present to a past that whispers in every castle, every village green, every tolling bell. Imagine yourself standing on the banks of the Thames, the river carrying 1,000 years of stories, its waters glinting under a starlit sky. As you drift toward sleep, let these tales linger, their voices soft but enduring, like the rustle of leaves in an ancient forest. The monarchy's story is not just England's. It is a human story, one of resilience and reinvention, of crowns won and lost, of legacies that endure beyond the grave. I hope this journey has brought you peace, a gentle escape into the past, where history cradles you as you rest. My name is Sherry, and it has been my privilege to guide you through this timeless tale. Thank you for joining me, for letting these stories weave their way into your dreams. If this journey has stirred your heart, I invite you to become part of our storytelling family. Subscribe to my channel, where history unfolds each night, crafted to soothe and inspire. Click the bell to never miss a tale, whether it's the saga of ancient empires or the quiet moments that shaped our world. Share this video with someone who loves history or seeks the calm of a bedtime story. And in the comments below, let me know which monarch's tale moved you most. Perhaps Alfred's courage, Elizabeth's defiance, or Victoria's steadfast heart. Together, let's keep these stories alive, a bridge between past and present, as you drift into dreams beneath a starlit sky. Good night, and until our next tale, may your sleep be deep and your dreams rich with history.